DDG episode 223. My name is Dave, and I'm joined by Michael.
Dave, we're here. Somehow you're I was going to say standing, but you're sitting. It's 85
Fine.
degrees over here. We're here to record this podcast. We got to cover the not E3 stuff. So we're here on a Sunday, which feels weird.
Yeah.
But kind of good because it's early on a Sunday. It's not like a late Tuesday, late Wednesday recording.
Yeah. I was looking back at all my some of the stuff that shows up on Facebook memories or photo memories. I've been actually sending Josh a couple random pictures of him looking like he's proposing to Emra.
Mm-hmm. With the switch, 1-2 switch.
Yeah, so just a couple of those things, but then at the same time, it just kind of sucks that I really enjoyed being in LA and seeing all the coverage and getting hands-on impressions. I know we'll talk about it, but being able to, more than likely, I would have played Call of Duty this week, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Doesn't quite look as good as the E3 time, the Summer Game Fest setup, but it's at least something. Though it looked like people at the Xbox press conference went to a theater to watch a YouTube video, which was kind of hilarious because I saw everyone posting photos of themselves in a theater only to be watching it on a screen. But we'll get there.
Yeah. All right. So we are Digital Days Gaming. We are typically a weekly podcast that posts on Thursday morning, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. This one will post a little differently, just as we're covering Summer Game Fest and, Michael just called it, non-E3. But if you're able to leave us a review on your podcast services, that's great. If you can use it with words, that's even more helpful. Especially this time of year, people are looking for opinions, thoughts. They're just fiending for gaming news. So leaving the reviews helps us in algorithms and search engines. Telling friends about our coverage also helps as well. So anybody that can download the show is always super helpful. You can join our community. All that is linked in the show notes. There's Discord, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, social media, those kind of things. And you can be part of the conversations and the discussions. You can also watch us live. Twitch.tv/DigitalDaysGaming or YouTube.com/DigitalDaysGaming. You can watch both of those simultaneously if you choose, as we are able to stream at the same time to both channels. You can subscribe to us on Twitch. If you want to link your Amazon account and your Twitch account, you get Prime Gaming, and you get a free subscription to a streamer of your choice. I would love if you would use that on us, but understand if you don't. Please make sure you at least use it if you do link it up, so you're not just wasting that little benefit. It does not auto-renew every 30 days, so please consider checking that if you have subscribed to us in the past and seeing if it's still valid. Other than that, everything, like I mentioned, is linked in the show notes, and you can subscribe on YouTube. That is free. You can follow on Twitch. That is free. And like I said, you can download the show and leave reviews. Those are all free. And then we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/DigitalDaysGaming, where you can support us monetarily with that way if you choose. And all right, we got some stuff to recap from the last couple of days. I'm going to throw it over to Michael. I don't even know why I said Mike. Sorry. Yeah, you're muted. So.
Boom. Okay, there we go. We have Summer Game Fest to cover first, so let's jump into that. That happened on Friday. Can't even remember. I think that was in the evening on Friday was Summer Game Fest, which...
I've been working this whole weekend, so...
Jeff Keighley put on his Not E3 show. This was one of those shows where Keighley beforehand was kind of letting people know, hey, this might not be that good. There is no and one more. The industry is seeing a lot of changes, aka layoffs, which means this might be a down year for video games. So Keighley was kind of jumping ahead of everything, being hey, don't expect your typical E3 or even Game Awards sort of presentation. So I'm just going to go through a list of things that I thought me and Dave would be slightly interested in, and some people from the community as well. And we'll just jump right into it. The first thing was LEGO Horizon Adventures coming to PS5, PC, and the Nintendo Switch holiday 2024. Dave is someone who loves Horizon and also has, a kid that might be into a LEGO game. We knew this was rumored for a while, but confirmation and seeing it's coming to Switch and PC.
Yeah, this is Lego.
Yeah.
This is Lego saying, "Oh, you want to use our license? Okay, that's fine. You have to put it on multiple platforms." So it looks cool. It looks like a Lego game set in the Horizon world, which sounds great. I'll be curious. I mean, I didn't really see much about it. If it has, cross-play, cross-support, stuff like that, that'll be fun to play. If we've seen massive success around Lego games in general when we went through the Lego Star Wars, Lego Batman stuff, those things were always fun. And then now more recently Lego Fortnite. Mm-hmm. This is just kind of Sony getting on that bandwagon as well and accepting the fact of Lego is arguably a top 10 worldwide brand, and you do what they say.
Yeah, this will have couch and online co-op. No mention of any sort of like crossplay though,
right.
From the blog post. But yeah, this kind of just solidifies. I know we already knew this because there's like 3 Horizon games out there, but this basically solidifies Horizon as like, this is a long-term PlayStation franchise because we're getting it for the kids so that they'll grow up and want Horizon.
We're getting a Horizon Lego before we're getting a Little Big Planet Lego before we're getting a Last of Us Lego.
Yeah.
Like
PlayStation All-Stars Lego. So many things PlayStation could have did, but they picked Horizon, which makes sense because from what I know,
there's no blood, there's no gore. It's a cool universe. They can,
the dinosaurs are really cool.
Mechs. Like you can essentially and they've already kind of had a little bit of a relationship because they made I can't think of the name right now, but they made the Lego the
long neck?
one of the long necks or something. I think you're right. Yeah. So they've already kind of had a working partnership and relationship with Lego through Horizon, and if they wanted to make a game or whatever, did it say who's developing this? Is Lego developing this?
No, it is Studio Gobo who do develop some of the Lego games. It's not the TT Studios. I believe they do like the major ones, but this
means that Sony is giving them access to their assets to make a game. So
they did name Guerrilla as like a co-developer, but that literally could just be like, here are the files to some art assets and stuff like that. This is it's good partnership. A lot of people were freaking out that it's not coming to Xbox, but it's coming to Switch. But that's just kind of PlayStation and how they play things. That's just, they're still in console war mode, but they also want to make money, and they know a Lego game will probably sell way more on the Switch than it would be worth putting on the Xbox, because the Xbox player base just isn't there. Like, there's like
console-wise.
Console-wise, there's just not a ton of people there, so they're just not going to do that. Doesn't mean they won't do it in the future if, like, say, Xbox sees a ton of new players, but right now it's just not worth it. Okay. After that, we have No Room in Hell 2. This is a sequel to a 2011 source mod. This looked cool. This is just basically a co-op zombie shooter. It's 8-player co-op, and it has permadeath. So it's just like Left 4 Dead on steroids, and that's basically what it was when it was a source mod back in the day. It was like a Left 4 Dead killer. Didn't quite have the polish, but again, it was like a mod. But this is going to be a full-fledged game, and this looked pretty cool. I could immediately see myself playing this sort of game, though getting 8 people together seems very difficult.
This style of game is just hard. I mean, I have a hard time getting 6 people to do a raid. This is a similar concept. Sure, it's in shorter periods of time and stuff like that, but this I'd be curious if it's going to have any kind of matchmaking or any bot filling, because like if it's either 8 or 4 or 8 or 6, like you're going to get just demolished unless it has scaling. And there's a ton of questions that are happening in it. The Left 4 Dead Evolve thing, I think it's played out, and this might be fun, but I don't see early on any like potential at all, any longevity.
I could see it being similar to Back 4 Blood, where Back 4 Blood had a lot of people playing it the first like couple weeks, but it didn't have the staying power as a Left 4 Dead 1 or 2.
That's what I mean by like no legs.
Yeah. So like it's one of those things where like I had been meaning to go back to Back 4 Blood for forever, because I never played any expansions, and I bought the deluxe edition of that game. So this looked cool. This would be something I would probably mess around with, but like you're completely right. I don't know if it'll have the legs, but we'll see. They could do some interesting things, like you said, with maybe bots or different, like if the game could evolve or change based on how many people you have available to you. Because
they can. We've seen other games do this. Like, okay, you only have 3 people on your team. Okay, this is what it feels like. Oh, you have 8 people on your team. This is what it feels like. Yeah.
So it's going to be about like the scalability that this game has, and matchmaking, if they can make it a fun game to where if you are playing with 5 strangers because you only have like 2 other people that you know personally that will co-op with you, sort of situation, can you matchmake 5 people in there and make it a worthwhile experience in terms of like call outs and all that sort of thing. So we'll see where things go from there. After that, we got Quidditch Champions. This is coming September 3rd to PS5, Xbox, PC, and Switch, and it is coming to PS Plus day 1. So that's a rare sort of announcement. I couldn't find any information if that means it's coming to Essential or Plus, but usually those games are coming to Plus that are day 1. But yeah, this is...
You're talking about the basic tier? I disagree.
It would make sense for this to come to the basic tier, but like
I agree with that.
Yeah. But there's been a lot of like those indie games have been coming to that mid tier when they're day ones. Strayed was that. And,
right, the second tier.
Yeah, the second tier. Yeah. So we'll see which tier that eventually comes to. But yeah, it's Harry Potter Quidditch. It's not the studio that made Hogwarts Legacy. It's a different studio. So we'll see how that goes.
Sony has some kind of Harry Potter deal.
They must, because they have the exclusive DLC that finally became available on Xbox and PC and Switch. And now they have like a PS Plus partnership with Quidditch Champions. But yeah, that trailer didn't really give too much. It kind of looked a little Fortnite-y for me, and there's a lot of games this year that kind of are like copying one or two art styles. It's like you're either a Japanese samurai game or you're like a Fortnite-looking game. It seems to be
or Lego style.
Or Lego. Or you're cutesy like the next game, CUFFBUST, which is a cutesy jailbreak game that looks like Among Us and Game Beast set in a prison. This was a wacky trailer. This is one of those trailers that immediately captured everyone's attention. I don't know if it did anything for me, though I imagine most people would be like, that looks like a game you'd enjoy. It just looked chaotic. I've never been the biggest Among Us fan, so we'll see how that goes. But it's cutesy teddy bears trying to break out of a jail. And it looks like it's competitive in terms of you working with or against other people to break out.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of these companies are trying to, like you mentioned earlier today, like trying to find the next Fortnite, or they're trying to find the next Among Us, and like, oh, look at the success of this. Like, okay, pandemic bubble, completely different world.
Yeah, like this
and you're not going to be able to penetrate that bubble again.
Yeah, like this definitely seems like it took some cues from like Fall Guys, which is a game that's still around, just not as successful as it used to be. After that, we got probably, this might sound weird to some people, but this might have been the biggest announcement at the Summer Game Fest, and it's Civilization 7 is coming in 2025 to PC and consoles. So this is the next Civilization game from Firaxis, which personally, Dave, for me, I was happy to see Firaxis is still around because 2K's been shutting studios down, and Marvel Midnight Suns bombed hard. The big thing with this is it's coming to console day one. Usually with Civ games, you get like the PC Civ game, and then you get like a rebranded, dumbed down version on consoles. So the fact that they're going to try and release console and PC at the same time, it was probably going to be controversial to people. Some people are probably going to look at the PC version and be like, is this the game you wanted to make, or did you make it this way to run on consoles? I know you're not a strategy tabletop sort of guy, but
Nope.
Civ is one of those. It's a big franchise.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
I know what it is.
Yep.
And people that play it are immensely talented at it. It's just ain't my thing.
Yep, it's one of those things. It's borderline one of mine. I played Civ Rev back in the PS3 days. But yeah, this is a huge game. Again, it's just to see Firaxis is working on something is kind of nice, because 2K seems like on their way to getting Grand Theft Auto out, is like cutting as many corners as they can by shutting studios down. So it's good to see that they're still doing stuff. After that, we have Blumhouse Horror Games. So the movie production company announced 6 games. These are various types of horror games spanning different like genres and look. There was at least 1 or 2 that looked like they were definitely going back to that PS1 Silent Hill era. But this was kind of cool just to see another movie production company being like, hey, we're going to get into games, and specifically we're going to get into indie games. We see that with Annapurna. I think A24 is also starting to do some of those sort of games. So this is just another like indie label, which we definitely need more indie labels to help some of these indie studios get their games out with visibility. And because it's a movie production company, we could potentially see some crossover with some of these games if they find some success. You're not the biggest horror game fan, but yeah, it was an interesting thing just to see. They brought out some people on stage. That's something the Summer Game Fest probably should have done more of, is bring people out on stage, because there definitely was like a flow issue with Summer Game Fest. I did skip some things, like Star Wars Outlaws. We're going to get to see more at Ubisoft Forward in the next day or so. So we're not going to talk about that tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's some other stuff in here that I might not talk about. One thing that I think both of us would probably be interested in is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind from Way Forward, featuring 5-player online-offline co-op upcoming to PC and consoles this year. I love the Power Rangers growing up, Dave. I think we talked about this before.
Yep.
You watched it or you just missed it?
No, I the original one. Like I can't like the 22 different versions they have now. Like I'm not in. Like Owen
this
was
is
into
Mighty
it for a little
Morphin.
while, but
so this is the OG cast.
This is the right, like what I would refer to as like I just watched this trailer because I must have missed this. I just watched it really quick. This is like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge with a Power Ranger skin on it. Like
Basically,
that's what this is.
Yeah. Different
and
studio.
That's
but
phenomenal. Yeah, like that's phenomenal. It's the side-scrolling beat 'em up with, the original. The original 5, the original color, the correct, like not the crazy suits, like the suits that you're accustomed to.
This isn't Neo or the Ninja one or
the right Zords. This
is
just
peak 90s Power Rangers.
So this is cool.
Yeah. And I did see Tommy pop up a couple times, so it looks like you might have the Green Ranger as a possibility to play as well.
I'm sure green and white are both in there.
I can see them doing a White Ranger DLC or something like that. Completely different sort of art style in terms of like they didn't get like the character or the actors' likenesses for this. Very animated like cutscenes.
I bet you won't be out of the suit very often.
Probably not, just maybe in the opening cutscene.
Yeah.
And that's usually how those games went back if you played any of them on like the Genesis or not. Like usually you're fully suits.
But I saw combo meters, health bars at the top of the screen, side scrolling stuff, just the bright colors, like just again, like very similar to the Shredder's Revenge.
Yeah.
And just very bright and just very, very nice and different things. Like they showed some on rail stuff, like roller coaster things that looked a little different. Fighting in the droid, where you're like almost like a virtual reality look, where you're punching with the Megazord.
I want to know how they're going to do co-op with that because it didn't really show like it's not like you have 5 Megazords. It's like they all build into one.
You control the left hand, I control the right hand,
which would be a fascinating thing to try and do in co-op. There's a lot of cool things they could do with this, and I think this is the way they need to approach a lot of these old IPs. It's like if it's an old IP from the 90s, you might as well make it in the style of games back then, but better. Like
I think that there's a tremendous market for that side-scrolling arcade quarter-eating game.
Yeah, there definitely is, and there's a way to modernize it that isn't just what we saw, like 10 years ago, where it's like, hey, here's the Simpsons games ported over, here's the X-Men arcade game ported over.
Yeah, you can tell that Shredder's Revenge was made for a controller and not an arcade cabinet. Yeah,
and it has mechanics that work, in terms of like, hey, we're not just trying to eat quarters because quarters don't exist, so we don't have to necessarily play that, to that mechanic, because anytime they would port those old arcade games, they would still have the quarter eating mechanic, which would just be kind of broken because, you're not putting quarters in. But they can modernize
Continue.
it.
10, 9, 8. Insert coin.
So it's coming from Way Forward. Way Forward does pretty good.
Insert $10. Inflation.
That would be wild, though, if they did like this. So connect your credit card so we can start taking quarters out on you. That should be the proud mode, the extreme mode. Is this
tap your card on the screen to continue?
Yeah. The Switch doesn't have NFC readers.
It does.
So,
yes, it does.
There's someone at Nintendo that was just like, it would be so cool if we could tap credit cards to the Switch controller. Dave
lawsuit. 7-year-old child spends $1 million.
Dave's just like, Owen, how many times did you tap my credit card to the Switch? It's like, just the numbers kept going up, so I thought I was doing good.
My son just walks up to me periodically and taps his Switch against my thigh. I don't understand why.
Yeah, what is this trend? And a bunch of charges. But yeah, that's coming out later this year. No like actual release date on it, just it's coming this year. But it'll probably hit this year because this is side-scrolling game. It'll be fine.
Yep.
After that, we got Slitterhead from the Silent Hill Siren Gravity Rush creator. This is the latest horror game from them, and it is coming November 8th. This is one of those trailers. I have no idea what's going on. It just kind of looks cool. When it comes to horror games, I'm kind of like 50-50 on whether I'm too scared to actually play or finish them. But this one definitely looked pretty cool. I'm assuming, Dave, no interest in the horror game, so we'll move on.
Nope.
Alan Wake 2 is getting a physical release, which is something me and Dave predicted when they first announced it would be digital only. We were like, there'll be a limited run version of this game. Mm-hmm. And there is a collector's edition coming, and I believe realtors, yeah. Retailers are getting like a standard
Century 21,
version
buy it off somebody's front porch.
Yeah. And the big thing from this was the first expansion is available now. So at the time they said the expansion would be available tomorrow. As you're hearing this, it's already available. And then the physical edition will come with Alan Wake 1 remaster digitally, which is pretty cool. Especially considering that Alan Wake 1 on disc is also really expensive because it had a very short run. So this is a good way to get people a copy of that game. We got another thing. I'm going to be a little mean. The skate stuff is just kind of weird. I don't know what they're doing, but we got a very I think it said pre-alpha footage of skate that it's coming, and there's going to be an alpha or a beta happening later this year. Dave, I don't know what's taking so long to make a skate game. It shouldn't take this long. I don't think they're doing anything crazy because it's a skate game. But
they got to figure out how to make it a games as a service.
I guess so, but I feel like that wouldn't even be that hard to figure out. Like, people just want to skate.
Colored skate decks, outfits. You know.
That's you solved it, Dave. Why has it been 4 years that they've announced this game?
Oh, you want to have a full half pipe? Okay, that's a microtransaction.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're doing. I know they release a trailer like every other year, being like, "Hey, we're still working on it," and that's cute and all, but I don't understand what exactly they're doing that is going to require them to show pre-alpha footage and then, run betas for. But I guess if that beta or alpha goes well, maybe we will have a game by next year. We'll see.
Yeah, right.
I'm being hopeful, Dave. I'm trying. After that, we had Monster Hunter Wild. We had another trailer for that. Not much to talk about there. It's just we're kind of seeing too much of this game. I almost feel like crossplay. Yeah,
that's the
was
biggest thing. Like that was the biggest thing. Yeah, which is great for the franchise. So
it's great if they get the multiplayer aspect working properly.
Correct.
It'd be great. And then after that, we ended up with a Phantom Blade Zero trailer coming. The game's coming in 2025. Keely was very excited about this. I didn't really see anything in this trailer that excited me. It's a cool looking, Souls-like samurai sort of game. But yeah, that is how they ended the show, which I feel like they could have found something better.
Yeah, I'm looking at this trailer now. It's like, this ain't it. But this is where you see a little bit of Keely, oh, this is my show. Mm-hmm. This is what I like. This is cool because he loves Bloodborne. He loves Elden Ring. He loves, Kojima games. So, yeah,
it definitely, especially when he's excited about a game, he wants to put that spotlight on it. And this is one of those ones where he must have seen something in this game that made him really excited, and he thought this is the way to end a show. Coming out of it, I didn't really see too many people in my circles being like, "Oh shit, did you see Phantom Blade Zero?"
Right.
And I know a lot of people that are into those sort of games, so it's just like, oh, no one's really talking about it. I saw more people talking about Power Rangers, Lego Horizon, and the Street Fighter DLC. That was announced during the show. But overall, Summer Game Fest was okay. Is kind of a, I wouldn't say letdown. I was going into it not expecting much because Keely's been dropping warnings all week.
And it's kind of to the point where these companies can do their own, if they feel like they got a thing, any company that feels like they got a thing. Ubisoft's got their own thing. Why would Ubisoft? Okay, cool. Yeah, here's show a little bit more Star Wars Outlaws, but make sure at the end of it says "Come watch us." Show a little bit of this and make sure even we'll talk about it in a minute too, but even just show a little bit of this and tell them to come watch this. These other companies are in control of their own thing, and Keely doesn't own rights to anything, so he really doesn't get to showcase something from Sony. He doesn't get to showcase something from Xbox or Ubisoft or EA. So you kind of, it's a bad term, but he kind of just gets table scraps.
PlayStation gave Lego for that reason.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could find, every once in a while, he's got a great relationship with From Software company, but that means he only gets a big announcement every 5 or 6 years. It's just, it feels off. It's not Keely's fault, but it just doesn't feel like it's in his show is in that, in that pattern. We used to have a Bethesda press conference, an Xbox press conference, a Ubisoft press conference, a Sony press conference, a Nintendo one, and a PlayStation one. And whatever else needed to fit in those 5.
Yeah.
or 6, whatever I said, and now those are still there. Those 5 are still there. 4, or if it was 5, now it's 4 because of Bethesda Microsoft acquisition, and even the BlizzCon stuff, like that kind of getting molded into there also. But like it would have been Call of Duty's reveal would have gone to the highest bidder, Xbox or PlayStation at the time.
Yeah.
Like, and now it just doesn't go to the highest bidder because Xbox owns it. So there's just and that's what's left over. This is the cool thing about this is that 5 years ago, everything you pretty much listed here would have been like a B-roll thing while they're in between 2 announcements at a Sony presser or an Xbox presser.
Yeah, I know. It definitely feels like it. It would have been B-roll. It would have been the montages that we're used to seeing.
This would have been the stuff that you and I covered that would have been like, holy crap, this is really fun. Like, and I don't know. I mean, it could, like, maybe you would have got to play Quidditch and you'd be like, hey, it's not really my thing, but I had a blast playing it. I was surprised by it.
Yeah.
Or, getting the opportunity to play to play a closed session of Skate, like a closed multiplayer session of Skate for you, possibly.
It's basically this felt like what I don't want to say filler, and because that sounds negative, but this definitely didn't have any of the big anchors that we're used to seeing that go to the big publishers.
Right. As an example, like you probably would have played CUFFBUST at E3. Outside of E3 at the Devolver Digital booth, and drinking a beer and been like, hey, and that would have got one of your awards. Like, hey, I had a great time with that.
Yeah.
Just as an example, like the brief 12 minutes I got to play of it was a lot of fun. It's on my list now. Versus, I saw a trailer. It looks interesting, but I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, yeah. And instead, it's just kind of, it gets bullet pointed like it is in our list right now, because it's not quite like a big enough game to like have a full-on discussion that you would see like the Xbox One. There are big games that we're going to talk about, and usually
why would they give any of that stuff to Keighley?
Exactly. And it's the same thing like I saw some people being like, why was Lego Horizon Adventures not at the state of play from last week? And it's just like, that probably would have helped that state of play significantly, but PlayStation didn't really care about that state of play, and they needed to give Keighley something because you want to keep that relationship up. Keighley does have power in industry. Like you saw how expensive things are. It came out, it was like $250,000 for a 30-second spot during the show. Mm-hmm. And like PlayStation wants to keep that relationship going. It sounds like some of the big publishers don't have to pay that. So like you keep that relationship going.
Which then makes the small publishers have to pay more because the big publishers aren't paying. Welcome to America.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where like this show felt like it really could have used some awards to be given out during it. Like it felt like the Game Awards without a big trailer and also without like the rewards to break it up. They tried to do some developer interviews during the show, and the crowd was a little too silent during it, and there was some awkward
I'm sorry,
pauses.
like Keighley's not a good interviewer.
No, even when he lets
he's a good
him
host.
talk.
Yeah, he can host something. He can reveal something. He can talk about bullet points of something. He cannot have a back and forth dialogue with a developer or a community manager or somebody playing the game. Like it's a hard skill. I don't think that I had it really well. A lot of you think when you hear me do interviews and stuff like that, you're like, oh wow, that's great. Like, and but just being able to hold that conversation and to be able to have that back and forth, either whatever you want to call it, wittiness or snappiness, to be able to when they're answering something for you to then immediately follow up versus like being scripted. Keighley feels very scripted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which again, it's not a bad thing. It's just an observation.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not like a bad thing. It works for the Game Awards because he's hosting a show, but doing interviews, it doesn't come across that great. And there was a couple times where like during the thing where they would have developers on there, you could almost feel like the audience kind of like losing interest, and like the camera was compensating by doing like all these cuts and panning shots of just two people talking about their game that just didn't make sense. But it was one of those scenes where it's like, you can tell the director was just like, I don't know what to do right now because this is supposed to be entertaining and it's just two people talking on stage and not cutting the footage. So it's like the camera just like panning for no reason, zooming in for no reason. It's like, okay. So even the director is kind of feeling the vibe of the room of like, oh, can we just get on to the next trailer? So that's just like an observation I noticed. But Summer Game Fest was what it was. We were warned it was going to be a big thing, and it delivered on that. On not being something super big. It did well viewership-wise, so some publishers might come to it and give them a little bit more next year. We'll find out. I also think it suffers from, there was a lot of advertisements that will have more trailers and footage at Gamescom. which is 2 months away, which I feel like Keighley's got to choose whether he wants to do Summer Game Fest or Gamescom, because I feel like having both shows bookend the summer is
because doesn't he do like opening night at Gamescom or something?
Yeah. Which he was advertising a couple times during this thing. So it's like, I don't think having these presentations
and then
2 months
opening
apart,
night at Gamescom, he'll just advertise for Game Awards.
Yes, yeah. So it's just one of those things where there might be too many of the things Keighley's trying to balance, and he needs to like decide, does he want to do his own thing or continue to work with Gamescom to make sure they're taken care of. But we'll move on from there to the Xbox showcase that happened today, as we're speaking, Sunday. This was a pretty strong showing. Again, I have bullet points of some of the big games. Most of them are going to be the Xbox first-party games, just because it's a thing that going into this that we were talking a lot about of like, can Xbox deliver fucking anything? And we got a lot of their games dated, or at least release windows. So this will be a pretty interesting discussion, I hope. The first thing that they showed was Black Ops 6. Treyarch and Raven are working on this. They did do, at the end of the showcase, a full like 20-25 minute presentation showing a little bit more about Black Ops 6. They showed, multiplayer and then some of the zombie stuff at the end of that. But yeah, Black Ops 6 looks like a Call of Duty game. Looks pretty good. Apparently, the Xbox website is saying it's going to be over 300 gigs of an install, which is just wild to me.
Tons and tons of multiplayer maps then, or big maps.
Yeah. The one thing that they mentioned, at least at the end showcase, is just how some of the maps are kind of going back to like the traditional Call of Duty map style. They mentioned like how many lanes are in it. They got a little like gritty in terms of like, hey, how large and small the maps are going to be and how they're going to be structured, kind of going back to what they used to be, which is important for Call of Duty because I feel like they've kind of lost their way in terms of like they're doing Warzone, which is obviously a gigantic map, and then they have stuff that kind of feeds off Warzone a little bit with how they structure stuff. So this seems to be going back to a more traditional Call of Duty experience, which I feel like we say every 2-3 years.
Boots on the ground.
Yep, boots on the ground, that sort of thing. But yeah, Black Ops 6 looks all right. Looks like a Call of Duty coming out this year. Any thoughts on the Call of Duties, Dave?
Yeah, that's fine. It's on Game Pass. I'll play it.
Yeah. The next thing we got was Doom Dark Ages from id coming in 2025 to Xbox, PC, and PlayStation 5. So Xbox did put the PS5 logo up a couple times during the showcase.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them. They picked weird spots, though. There were some third-party games that are coming to PlayStation that they did not put PlayStation logos on, but then some games they did put PlayStation's logo on the trailers. But yeah, this is Doom Dark Ages. Looks like, the Doom Slayer's coming down to Earth that is covered in hell. And it just looks like a Doom game. Looks like probably the biggest Doom game that they've ever made. And this is coming in 2025. I like Doom. It's a little too edgelordy for me, but this did look kind of fun. I dabble in Doom. I never get super into them.
Yeah, I haven't got into them. I remember playing like the original Doom, like the hallway corridor one and stuff like that. But the newer ones, I haven't really ever delved into. Then, to be honest with you, I think the little bit that I have messed with them, like it actually moves like way too fast for me. Like, it gets quicker and quicker. It hurts. Like, yeah. I've always had a little bit of, like, believe it or not, I've always had a little bit of an FPS problem that I can kind of work through, but I can't play, like, even on my PC, I can't play Destiny at higher than 60 frames per second because I start feeling wonky.
Yeah, no, this definitely is super fast moving. It's Doom at its best. I do like their escalation of Doom during this, like, new trilogy, I guess we get to say it's a new trilogy now, that there's a third one. So, like, the escalation has been really nice to see. 2025 is sooner than I expected, even though I know it's been a couple years. I have to go back
and look and see how long since the other Doom, but yeah. It's, I love, I love the short window of reveal to launch, so I'm happy with this. If this is, I guess at the next Xbox showcase this time next year, like I would assume this would get official dated.
Yeah, this seems like this would be fall holiday 2025, even though they didn't say it. After that, we have State of Decay 3 trailer. No release date. This is Undead Labs, so another Xbox studio. Dave, I thought this came out already. Like, State of Decay games.
I think they did some work on State of Decay, but did you skip over Doom Dark? Or no, never mind.
Yeah.
Doom Dark. I don't know why I read that like that. So.
Oh, yeah. I didn't put the colon. But yeah, State of Decay 3 got a new trailer. I feel like we've seen trailers for this pretty often, and I always kind of forget that State of Decay 3 is not out yet, but apparently there's still no release date on it. Looks interesting. Zombie shooters. State of Decay is one of those franchises for Xbox that is, I wouldn't say popular, but like it's like one of those mid-level franchises that there's a decent amount of people playing it, and they seem to be pretty dedicated to State of Decay.
Mm-hmm.
But
here we go.
Zombie
this
shooter.
Here's your surprise.
Yeah, so Dragon Age Veilguard got a cinematic trailer introducing the companions, and this obviously is going to lead up to the gameplay trailer that they announced was going to be already happening on Tuesday. But the biggest thing that we got from that trailer, outside of seeing all the companions, is that it is fall 2024, which I was just talking about this with someone in Discord, and I was saying there's no way it's coming out this year because BioWare is a mess. But yeah, fall 2024. If they can hit this release date, that would be pretty huge, pending gameplay. Because gameplay is supposed to be a little different for this one.
Yeah, so what's your initial thoughts on the animations?
It's good. Like, a lot of people were upset. This was one of those games people said, like, why does it look like Fortnite? Because it is way more animated, because Inquisition kind of had a little bit more of a realistic look. But if you go back and look at Dragon Age 1/2, look at Inquisition, and now look at this, like, the art style has changed almost every time. Because technology is just different, and they go with a different route. So I'm not holding too much against, how the cinematic looked, because I also think there's a chance that this was just a cinematic trailer and not what the cutscenes will look like, or what the gameplay is going to look like. And we've seen that before with games where you have the trailer looks nothing like what the cutscenes in the game are going to look like or what the gameplay is going to look like. So I was fine with how the game looked, though I know this will be a huge debate until Tuesday when we get the gameplay reveal.
Yeah.
But
is that gameplay reveal? Is that like is an EA talking, or is it just like there's just a Dragon Age Day on Tuesday, or just BioWare? Okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's just a BioWare thing. Yeah, EA's not really doing anything this year, as far as I know, unless the BioWare thing turns into one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, especially. Yeah, I actually have to look, but I'm pretty sure Dragon Age is just going to do its own thing, and I believe it's going to be 15 minutes, which is a decent amount of time. Gameplay footage leaked, so I think everyone going into it already knows like this is going to look different than previous Dragon Age games or play differently. So them spending 15 minutes kind of breaking down why they're making the changes should be really beneficial for their sales pitch. Nice. But yeah, people are already getting horny for the characters because that's just how this franchise fan base is. So you have a bunch of people already getting ready to write fanfic just off like a 2-second image of the character designs, and Dave's looking at me like, are you serious? And it's like, yes, Dave.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's just how that fandom is. So they're already getting horny. But after that, we had Expedition 33 coming in 2025 to Xbox, PC, and PlayStation from a studio called Sandfall. It's a turn-based RPG. Really cool take on turn-based RPG in terms of like how the gameplay looks and how snappy it shows some of that like footage. This has a really cool premise, though. It's basically like there's like a painterest, they called it, that basically would every year puts a new number on a big wall, and whatever number is put on there, anyone that age will die. And the people that you play as are trying to stop the painterest because they're tired of losing people. So really cool art design, interesting story. This is a relatively new studio, I believe. I looked them up because their name sounded familiar, but not quite. And sounds like they were formed in 2020. But this, I believe, is coming to Game Pass day one. And it's one of those partnership games, but it's coming to every platform, Xbox, PC, and PlayStation. But yeah, the Expedition 33 looked pretty good. So I'm kind of sold on it. As soon as I saw that trailer, I was like, this has been a really good showcase, and we're only like halfway through. Then we got South of Midnight from Compulsion Games, trailer and gameplay. And this game is coming in 2025. Dave, I remember we were both interested in this game last time they showed it. This is that the game that kind of has like a stop motion sort of look to it, which I'm waiting for people to react to seeing a game with like a lower frame rate that's on purpose. Kind of gives me the same vibe. Remember when Spider-Verse came out, the first one, and people were like, why does it move like that? This game definitely has those vibes in terms of how it's animated. And it looks really nice, and actually seeing the gameplay blended with those cutscenes just made this game all the more intriguing. But it was a decent chunk of gameplay that we got to see from this.
Yeah, I think it looks fun.
Yeah, it looked really cool. Very linear, which I'm fine with. So we'll just have to see. Compulsion Games is one of those studios I don't fully like have faith in after like I think they're the We Happy Few developers. So I'm hoping that they can execute on this. But that's also, a Xbox studio that is putting a release window on one of their games.
Right.
Then we got a new expansion for WoW coming in August. As someone who follows the Final Fantasy XIV game and fandom, it's just kind of funny how WoW just kind of like shit stuff out in terms of expansions of just like, yeah, here's an expansion. There's not really any fanfare or anything going crazy with it. It's just Blizzard. They print money and have stuff coming out. And I just mentioned that because like there's an expansion coming out in August, and like Final Fantasy has an expansion in like 2-3 weeks, and like the internet's just always talking about it. But WoW's been around for like 20 years.
Right.
Then we got a new trailer for Metal Gear Delta. No release date yet on that. Just another cool trailer. Dave, with them remaking like Metal Gear Solid 3, is that something like, from what we've saw from the previous trailers, is that something that you would be maybe interested in trying? Because I know Metal Gear is kind of
possibly just because like that cat was in that Metal Gear's like heyday was right in that time where I was like not really playing games, like PS2, early on. Yeah, when Jonathan and Zoe were born. So like 2001 to 2006, 7. But I don't know, like there's not any like tangible like feeling that I'm like, oh, I gotta go play that. Like it might be something I mess with, but I don't see myself like seeking it out.
Yeah, it's definitely like a weird. The reason I asked you is because it's it's a remake of the third game. So it's like they're jumping into the middle of the franchise. Timeline wise, it might make sense because it takes place in a certain period of time that would if they're going to start releasing these in like timeline order, it's early enough of a game to start with. But it just seems like a weird sell for people that maybe aren't too into the franchise to be like, hey, here's Metal Gear Delta, and then if you look into it, it's like, wait, this is the third Metal Gear game. And in reality, it's like the 6th Metal Gear game, probably, like, but it's like the 3rd numbered game. But yeah, I was just curious about like your interest in Metal Gear Delta, it being like one of those games that's just kind of jumping in the middle of the franchise. Mm-hmm. After that, we got Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn, an action RPG launching in July. It will be on Game Pass. This was another action RPG that looked pretty cool. There was a lot of, I would say there's like, we got a lot of like samurai Souls-like action RPGs, and then we had a decent amount of like fantasy action RPGs. Mm-hmm. So this was just like another one of those, and it's coming out really soon. I think this game was shown at previous events, and I just maybe completely missed it. But this was the first time I can remember seeing this game, and it actually looked pretty interesting.
Yeah, July 18th.
Yeah, so coming soon.
Same day as college football. It's going to die.
I am pretty sure the fantasy RPG crowd's a little different than the college football crowd.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. Then we got a reintroduction to Perfect Dark. This is from the Initiative. We got a gameplay trailer, pretty decent sized gameplay trailer with also like a lot of story bit cinematic stuff, but still no release date on it. This was one of those things where this has been in dev hell. They did put Crystal Dynamics' name on it as well as the Initiative. It looks good, Dave, but I just don't think this game's real still.
Well, you didn't think Dragon Age was real either.
Yeah, but this one especially I don't think is real. Still, especially with no release window or release date on it. But yeah, it looked good.
I don't understand the full disclosure. I don't understand the appeal of this franchise. I've never played any of them.
I mean, it's was it Rare's old one? It was like one on N64, one on Xbox, and then this is just a reboot, I think, something like that. But yeah, no, I want this to be a thing that exists and is playable. I just don't know if I have much faith in it being a thing. Especially if they don't even want to put a release window or date on it.
Yeah.
Then we got Diablo 4's new expansion coming this October. This was pretty cool trailer. It is funny that it was one of those trailers that they had to... they brought, I think it was Matt Booty on stage to... like intro the trailer, and then they had to put a bunch of like, hey, some of these images are disturbing, viewer discretion advised. And yeah, the trailer was super disturbing because it was a Diablo trailer.
Yep.
But yeah, Blizzard obviously working on this, but expansion coming in October. And they also talked about how like Diablo's on Game Pass and it's been really big for the game, which...
Duh.
Yeah. But also one of those things where it's like, I don't fucking know anybody still playing Diablo.
Me either.
Yeah. Then we got another hero shooter coming in 2025 called Fragpunk. This has maybe an interesting mechanic where it had like a card mechanic that you can use to basically
it looked cool.
Do your powers and stuff like that. I saw you can trigger like big head mode for your opponents to get headshots easier. Definitely look cool. I'm always worried about any sort of like live service shooter game because you get invested in them and it just sometimes they just don't hit and you end up with like the final situation where it's really popular for a month or two and then slowly kind of fades. After that, we got from Playground Games, Fable, new story and gameplay trailer, and then also release window of 2025. This looked really good. I feel like it's looked good the last couple times they've shown it, but we at least got a decent amount of like cinematic gameplay footage. So this I'm looking forward to this. I really only played Fable 2, never played 1, and then I kind of dabbled in 3. So this being, standalone Fable reboot, whatever you want to call it, has my interest peaked, and it just generally looked good.
Yeah, I mean, the little bit that I saw of it looks intriguing. I've tried to mess with some of the Fable games on Game Pass, but I don't have as much of attachment as everybody else does to it. But again, as much as people hate to say it, it's on their service, and when and if it comes out, I will check it out.
I wonder like how many people do what you do. It's probably a lot. That like, and it hurts.
It hurts them. Like it does hurt them because there's no hype, there's no excitement, there's no, hey, I pre-ordered this, hey, I'm doing this. Like none of that happens, and it's like, okay, cool, great, I already have Game Pass, thank you. Like that's something else that if I hate it, then I'll move on.
Yeah, I'll play it again eventually.
Which is the biggest pro to Game Pass, and at the same time is the biggest con to Game Pass.
Yeah. After that, we got a Life is Strange sequel, Life is Strange Double Exposure, launched in October. This is continuing Max's story. Looks like Max's powers have evolved greatly. This was a cool trailer just because it's going back to the main protagonist from the first game after the last couple games were completely new characters and settings. So this was something I was really excited for. It coming in October. Perfect. This is one of those things where by the end of the Xbox showcase, I went from like, beginning of before Summer Game Fest, before the showcase, I was like, man, 2024 is kind of a shit year for gaming. But after the showcase and there was a few announcements, I'm like, you know what, 2024 might be okay after all in terms of video game releases. But yeah, Life is Strange coming in October. Can't wait for that. This does confirm the ending I got wasn't canon, which hurts me greatly, but I will live and survive. Then we got a decent chunk of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle from Machine Head Games. We got cinematics, we got gameplay, and a release window confirmation of 2024, which we already had before, but just them saying it again is good. I know, Dave, you would prefer a date because you have your 90-day window that you like to have.
I do. Yeah.
I feel like there's still wiggle room.
Which is getting abused.
Yeah. I feel like there's still wiggle room where they could delay this game. Hopefully they don't, because Xbox needs games to release, and I guess with Game Pass, the 90-day window doesn't really matter to them.
Right.
But this is coming to just Xbox and PC.
Because they're not banking on pre-orders.
No, not at all.
They're banking on Game Pass membership increasing.
Yeah. And people like me who just I stop Game Pass for once in a while, and then when a game comes out, I just re-up the day the game comes out, and then I'll have it for a month or two.
Yeah, I mean, but even the next game, this is where we're starting to get into that problem a little bit. So they did a deeper dive into Avowed, answered some of the concerns it sounds like that people were having about it, showed some more gameplay mechanics and combat and stuff like that, and 2024 release window. So now this game is not coming out between now and August 1st. I'll bet what little hair I have left on my head on that. So now you're talking about two major releases for Xbox that could possibly cannibalize each other, but guess what? With Game Pass, they are not worried about that because they need to release content.
Yeah, and
you're talking about a Diablo expansion
in October,
and in October, Avowed, and Indiana Jones, all within probably a 60-day window.
Yeah, which is something that Xbox has just never been able to do since the Xbox One or the Xbox 360 era. Where they're like, hey, here's a bunch of big games that are coming out. Basically doing what PlayStation does, or used to do, at least. Where PlayStation sometimes will just be like, yeah, here's 3 triple, quadruple A games that are super big, and they're coming out within a 90-day window of each other. And that's something that PlayStation's always been able to do, and it's led to PlayStation's success. And now Xbox is kind of trying to do that. I don't know if it'll be as successful because Avowed's a new franchise. I think they're highly overestimating Indiana Jones's popularity. And then, Diablo's an expansion. But it's still big enough content, and Xbox desperately needs content. And to show that they're not fuck-ups, because they have
Xbox needs their own content. Xbox Studio content on their subscription service.
Yes.
New content. Yeah. New games. And
they need to show that, hey, yes, we close studios, but we can still actually release games. And that was the important thing for this whole show, is just hey, here's the next 18 months. There's stuff coming. After that, we got some new Xbox Series S and X variants coming this fall, a digital Series X in white, Series S with a larger SSD, and then a Galaxy version of Series X, which was just hey, here's some sprinkles on a Series X.
Josh just put, not Josh Langford, but a Josh that I know just put Avowed release date releasing on November 12th.
Okay, so that would make me think that
Indiana Jones is October.
Yeah, because you can probably do Diablo and Indiana Jones.
Late September, early October.
Yeah, I would probably put September for Indiana Jones, but it's so close. Why wouldn't you just say it? And then
especially when Wario has it at 7:30 today, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time today, and your showcase was 6 hours before that.
Yeah, and then the last one more thing was Gears of War E-Day from the Coalition. It's a prequel showing the Emergence Day. No gameplay or release date shown. We got a little bit of Mad World in it just to pull the nostalgia strings. But yeah, it's funny. When the trailer first started, I thought it was old Marcus Phoenix, and then I realized it was younger Marcus Phoenix after a couple seconds. But yeah, this is a good way to continue the Gears of War franchise. It's hey, let's go back to the beginning and show how all of this started and how these characters kind of became who they are. And then where you go from there, I kind of don't know. But based on how long it takes for games to develop, I think they're just that'll be a problem we deal with in 7 years when we come out with the Gears after this. But it's a perfect opportunity. You have a bunch of new people that you hope to come back to Xbox. So hey, let's reboot the Gears franchise or start at the beginning to kind of make people not afraid to jump in. What did you think of the teaser for Gears E-Day?
I mean, I've dabbled with Gears, but for a long time, it's been something that has just not. I never really had somebody kind of guide me or show me Gears. But I mean, something like this, it's kind of was genre defining for an an over the shoulder shooter. So like them doing something that took place before then, like for me personally, I probably would play this and then see like, oh, I really like this story. I want to see what happens next, and then maybe try to play the first Gears. Now, the part that sucks about this is that you play a game in 2024, 2025, and then you go back and play the game that takes place after the fact, and that came out in 2005.
Yeah, that's and there's been a lot of rumors that they're working on remakes of Gears, and this would be a good time to maybe get those remakes out there. And they don't have to do anything crazy with like remakes or remasters. Just clean them up, have them run a little bit better, and go from there. But yeah, I think they had a good showing. Ending on Gears is a good idea in terms of having a OG Xbox franchise as like the one more thing. But overall, Dave, what did you think of the Xbox showcase?
Would have loved to see some more tangible dates instead of just years or windows, personally. But I mean, we've been asking for content, and like you said, it looked like it was a very heavy focus on the next 18 months without them, I guess, ultimately overcommitting and having to backpedal.
Yeah.
So it's solid.
Yeah. For me, I was really impressed with what they had here. Their third-party stuff they had here was really good. Dragon Age, obviously, and they had an Assassin's Creed trailer and some other stuff as well. But yeah, I think this was an important showcase for them in terms of like, hey, here's our first party studios that we have left after closing a couple. And they're actually releasing games. Right now, there's something I tweeted, so I'll just reiterate here. It's one of those things where the next 18 months are super crucial for Xbox because they need to release a bunch of games. They need to release successful games, critical and sales-wise. Whatever sales means to Xbox, whether it's Game Pass subscriptions or individual copies, because there's an opportunity for them because PlayStation does not have anything realistically major coming in the next 18 months. But the thing is, Xbox will only have this window because PlayStation eventually will have a bunch of their studios ready to go, and PlayStation in the past has shown that they are willing to release 3 or 4 major games in a year. And eventually all their first party studios at PlayStation will be ready to release something, and then Xbox will either lose ground or, will become irrelevant during that time. Because like Sucker Punch will have something ready, Santa Monica will have something ready, Naughty Dog will have something ready, Insomniac. There's a bunch of studios that will make killer games for PlayStation and will easily take over the mind space of the gaming world once they get those studios lined up and ready to go. So it's very important right now for Xbox to release as many games as possible to get people on their side, either with Game Pass subscriptions or new consoles. So they need to release a bunch of these games, and they're showing like they're taking it serious. Hey, here's a bunch of games. We're ready to go. And it's not even all the studios they own. So it's not like they'll run into another drought again, theoretically. And of course, they all have to get this out before Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out next fall. Because that will be another thing that they have to deal with, because that's going to eat up a total industry, basically. But yeah, I think they knew what they had to do, and they showed a bunch of good stuff. I don't know if there was anything here, though, that is like God of War big, Spider-Man big from Xbox,
right.
But there's enough stuff in here. They have a bunch of doubles and triples. Not necessarily like home runs. But yeah, I think it was a really good showing. It was probably their best show in a really long time. But yeah.
Yes, I would agree. Like one of their best, one of the best outings. Now it's one of those ones you have to look back on 6-8 months and see if they're able to deliver what they showed. But they showed like a lot of games, some gameplay. Again, I would have loved to see more dates, but game after game after game after game after game after game after game. So, kudos. Like, for whatever reason, not very many games are in my wheelhouse that I'm aware of, but still games and first party stuff. Yeah,
and again, first party stuff was key for this because PlayStation, I think, is done for the year. Like, I think the state of play that we got was pretty much it. We'll probably get one more state of play. That'll be like a deep dive into Astrobot or whatever third party game that they're going to be working with in the fall. Nintendo kind of, again, just Nintendo's probably going to be quiet this year because the Switch is going to be coming out next year. So like Nintendo might be wrapped for the year.
Yeah, I still expect them to do some kind of direct between now and June 20th.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be a partner direct or an indie direct. It's not going to be like, hey, here we have a major hit coming in the fall. It's going to be, smaller stuff. It's going to be like the Princess Peach game. It's not going to be like, here's the next Mario, here's the next Zelda sort of thing. So this being like the only major show we're going to get this year from one of the big three, it was at least a decent show at that. And it's not just them winning by default.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right.
I'm very intrigued about at this point in time what Ubisoft is going to show this week. Mm-hmm. Just because they've shown some other stuff and they're supposed to be talking about like the Division, mostly more content, more additional content for it. So is that going to be something that they can, tweak my interest enough? The biggest thing over the last probably I'd say 24 to 36 months, there is like it's just missing wow moments. Nothing is like, oh my god, that's so cool, or holy cow, I can't believe they're doing that. Like I don't know if that's just me being cynical, but I'm just not seeing anything that's like, like you were surprised that like Dragon Age was shown and dated this year.
Yeah.
Like, but is that a wow for you?
It would have been if there wouldn't have been so much turmoil at BioWare. There's a caveat there. Like if BioWare weren't in turmoil, it probably would have been a big wow moment.
I feel like the last wow moment we had was seeing like Wolverine's claws going to the counter.
Yeah, but even that, like I feel
we kind of already knew that.
Yeah,
we had a feeling that that had been leaked or rumored that was a thing, and we're like, okay.
I also think it comes down to how these stuff's presented too.
Yeah.
But go on. What were you gonna say?
No, it's just missing the I want to see a trailer with a logo that I'm like it makes me sit up on the couch and even like I'll be honest, I feel like even at this point in time, Naughty Dog's lost it for me now too. Like when Naughty Dog's logo would show up, I'm like, oh, is this more Last of Us? Is this Uncharted? Like what is this? Like and that's maybe it'll be Insomniac.
Yeah, I think Insomniac's
logo shows on the screen. Yeah, but at this point in time, I already know it's Wolverine.
Yeah, no, and I think the problem is like we're having an issue where stuff's kind of mentioned too soon.
Yeah,
which takes the fun out of things. We know games now take 5 to 7 years to develop.
Yeah,
and that plays in a part in why things get announced too soon.
I guess the next moment for me that I'm going to see when I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, is going to be when they put Sony Santa Monica on the screen again.
Yeah.
Whether it's more God of War, which I don't think it will be, or it's Barlog's new sci-fi game. Because like I want, they missed like when The Last of Us first got teased, like it was a freaking like Cordyceps bug during the Game Awards.
Yeah. That it's one of those things where I also think that's where it comes down to presentation, to where if we're going to go this format for like E3 or not E3 for Summer Game Fest, the Game Awards are going to become the most important thing because at least you get some crowd reaction there. You get a little bit of hype. You get a little bit of showmanship. The Xbox thing probably would have been elevated if they would have fed the crowd audio into some of the trailers, because it might sound silly, but Dave, you remember being in the audience during the Final Fantasy VII remake?
Mm-hmm.
Like that trailer was kind of cool, but hearing the crowd go nuts, either when you're watching it from home or in the audience, made that seem way bigger at the time. And the presentations that we currently get are like the Xbox pre-recorded thing, where it's just like, here's Phil Spencer in like a soundstage with cool lights. Mm-hmm. And that just doesn't really do anything. Or you get the Keighley thing where it's kind of awkward and,
I just don't think they know what to do post-pandemic.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, they don't know how to handle that. Mm-hmm. And we need to find, like, the happy medium. And unfortunately right now it's like the Game Awards is where we get
everybody's hating on people. Yeah, everybody's hating on people today because they're tweeting out like Xbox, on my way to Xbox Showcase, and hashtagging it, and people are like, oh, look at all the Xbox shills. They do the same damn thing if Sony was doing something.
Yeah, Yeah.
It's like,
though it is kind of funny seeing all the media people wearing the Xbox jackets that were given out, and it's just
they know that Microsoft knows how to brand.
Yes,
but Microsoft knows how to brand. Like they know what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I have a Cyberpunk jacket. Like, you know, it's one of those things where it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's just a matter of like they understand how to brand. Sony used to do the same thing. Like, you know, whether, you know, no matter what it was, like it's just like little things like bracelets or colored bracelets, or, you know, like leaving with God of War posters, or, you know, like whatever it was. Like they knew how to brand, and these companies still know how to brand, but they're also determining that they're getting the same return on investment without a brand.
Yeah.
Like none of this stuff is changing. Like why would Sony need to push? They're selling millions and millions and millions. And
they don't have anything to push right now because all their games
and they're still moving
out.
consoles. They're like, oh, it's not moving as fast as we want it to move. We're at 90% of our projections. Okay, like you know, like and it's getting brushed over because of how much in general they're doing. But like we didn't really talk about it, but they released data like over 50% of their player base isn't even on PS5.
No, I know, and that's a crazy thing. And it's one of those instances where it's just like people are like, oh my god, that's bad for PlayStation. It's like they haven't released a lot of games for PS5.
Right.
Like if I wasn't a diehard Spider-Man fan, there is a chance I would, or if I didn't, you know, obviously have the podcast, I would probably still be on PS4, or I would have moved over to PC. You know, like they're not releasing a ton of games, and eventually they will get the studios lined up, and you will get that jump from PS4 to PS5. Yeah. And it's going to be huge for them.
This year, like for Sony, Astrobot's not going to do it for me. Like, yeah, I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
But it's not going to make you go buy. But I can play Concord on my PC.
No. I'm just saying, like, those are the two big things PlayStation's
like that's what we know right now.
Yeah.
So you got Astrobot and Concord the last half of the year versus Indiana Jones, Avowed, and Diablo, and Black Ops.
Yeah. And who knows what else in here, because there's a couple things that don't have a date.
Yeah. But I mean, those are and you know, and a Fallout 76 expansion.
Yeah,
that you didn't even mention that they talked about briefly.
Yeah, Sea of Thieves gets an expansion.
Yeah,
in Fallout 76.
So their games they're padding their games as a service. They're releasing new games, and you know 3 or 4 in the second half of the year, hopefully. And Sony's releasing 2, and that's fine. Like they because Sony's like, well, we don't got to do anything right now. Yeah. And you know, nothing's forcing them to do anything like that. So it's just kind of like, and then like we've been saying for years, Nintendo's going to Nintendo. Although they'll remake Twilight Princess, and people will lose their mind saying $70 is too much for it, and then 2 days later it's going to be like fastest selling Zelda remake, 12 million copies in 48 hours.
Yeah,
like so it's like, what's the point?
When and again, PlayStation, I don't think they're purposely doing, you know, what they're doing, where it's like, hey, we just have Astrobot and Concord. That's just literally how it just worked out with their studios.
Right.
You know, it's like Xbox probably wanted to release games the last 3 years, but it just didn't work out with where their studios were based on when they acquired some of them. They already released a game.
Sony pushed so hard at the end of the PS4, beginning of the PS5 life cycle.
Yeah.
And you know, which is fantastic. We've seen it before, and then now you've got the pendulum is like at the low point, and it's going to swing over, and it's going to hit the wall, and it's going to swing back and go to a low point and swing over and hit the other wall. Like it's going to happen, and right now we're in that low point. It's you know, and it sucks, but you know, like is it easily fixed with Uncharted 5 or Last of Us 3? The answer is no, because they're not ready, and even if they exist, and they're not coming out because you know the board and people want more and more and more and more. So it's got to be bigger, it's got to be better, it's got to be longer, it's got to be larger, it's got to be faster, it's got to be cooler.
Yeah. And
all of that equals time.
Yeah. And it's something, you know, like...
Oh, and it's got to be profitable.
Yeah, it's got to be profitable. Like when Jason Schreier basically tweeted to someone, he's like, oh, the reason Sucker Punch doesn't have a game right now is because it takes 7 years to develop AAA games. You know, right. And I think that's why it's crucial for like Astrobot this year to show Sony, like, hey, you can invest in smaller games that will release quicker. Though it's been a couple years since Astrobot originally, but like if they can,
and that's what our hope was with Game Pass and all these, you know, and all these studios and stuff that they were purchasing. Like, what is Double Fine doing?
Yeah,
you know, it's been what 3 years since Psychonaut 2?
4 years, yeah.
Yeah. So what are they doing? Because they're supposed to be the studio that can turn out stuff or make something old look new again. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Like you know, same thing. What has Sony been doing all the way since Days Gone? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
These other studios, the studio that they took away, and I think they might have closed it. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. The studio that they took away the Last of Us remake for, gave it back to Naughty Dog. What are they doing?
Yeah, that's Sony Bend, I believe.
No, it was somebody else. It was like another like a small auxiliary group of people that were making Last of Us. It was like it didn't have a name, but it was like a team. I swear, maybe I'm wrong. There was they were like visually remaking stuff, and they got really far with it. And Naughty Dog's like, okay, that's good enough now. Give it back.
Was it Visual Arts?
Maybe like are they still under the Sony umbrella? Did they close that studio? Because I feel like they didn't really give them any credit. But I think they had initially at least started on The Last of Us.
I think
remake.
Visual Arts still exists. Pretty sure
Under the Sony umbrella, right?
Yeah.
So what are they doing?
Well, they were an auxiliary studio.
Right.
For the most part. So it's like, yeah, are they still classified as that? It's just like...
Are they making, MLB The Show 25 back of cards?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things going on at PlayStation. Like, we don't have time to talk about it today, but we'll talk about it next week. Bungie just released an expansion for Destiny. Mm-hmm. Marathon's next up. What's the future of Bungie? Is this expansion...
Bungie also just announced this weekend after the raid was beaten that they're doing they're doing another live stream on tomorrow, Monday Monday June 10th of what the next year of Destiny is looking like. So like 4 days after you release something, like, okay, we're going to talk about the next 11 months. Like, huh?
And it's one of those things. Is PlayStation like, fuck, Destiny's final shape was good. Like, really wanted them to move on from Destiny, and they're going to keep it going. It's one of those things where it's just like the PlayStation
is it, like you said before we started recording. Is Destiny doing Destiny things enough for Sony?
Yeah,
like it's not going to be gangbusters,
yeah.
But you're going to have for the next 6 weeks, you're going to have close to 150,000 to 225,000 concurrent players every day.
Yeah, and it's one of those things when it comes to like Destiny. Or for PlayStation, is just like, is this still worth the investment? And if the concurrent player count holds, Bungie's going to be like, yes, it is. And, PlayStation's like, well, fuck, we gave you a deal that says, like, you can run your shop how you want, as long as Destiny's,
Yeah, so all of a sudden the final shape comes out and Bungie's like writing in their checkbook and peeling it off and giving it to Sony Dad and be like, okay, you can leave us alone now.
Yeah,
and
fuck off until Marathon comes out. Yeah. But like that, PlayStation has to figure out what they want to do, and I have confidence PlayStation will have their ducks in a row. Will be ready to release a bunch of stuff.
They released some information about this dual CEO thing that they're going to do, and they're supposed to be more verbal and more more talking more often. And like, we'll see, because they kind of need to at this point in time. Based on what Microsoft has shown for their next 18 months, like Sony's got to say something.
Yeah. And I'm confident that at the end of this 18 months, PlayStation will go back to being like, hey, here's our spring game, here's our summer game, and here's 2 games for the winter. And that's going to be great, and that's going to sell a lot of PS5s. It's going to a lot of people from PS4 to PS5. It's going to set them up for the future pretty well, but that means for the next 18 months, there's not going to be a lot to release. Right. And the reason I keep saying 18 months is because, like, realistically, nothing's coming out 6 months because that's already announced, and I don't really see any of their studios outside of maybe Sucker Punch being ready to release something next year. Yeah,
unless they come out in September with the PS5 Pro and, like, 6 games that we don't know about. But
yeah, and even that seems, like, super unrealistic. Yeah. And especially if you're going to do the Pro, like, the idea of the Pro coming out and there not being any new games for it is wild to me. But yeah, that's the state of the industry. Yeah,
it's not a bad thing. It's great for conversation, like but it's just kind of one of these things where it's like, what did you see the last 72 hours, Michael? That's 100% day one must play $70 buy for you.
Dragon Age Expedition 33, which is a new thing that looked very interesting, and South of Midnight, but I don't know how much that game's going to be because it looks like it could be a smaller game. Those are like the 3 games that I walked away from that I'm like, cool. I'm down for these. There wasn't really anything in Summer Game Fest that really got my attention.
Yeah, and for me on this list, looking on this list right now, it's not a $70 game, but it's Power Rangers.
Yeah. Yours is a small game you'll play for a weekend.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
Oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, but it's like, okay. Versus before, I would have like at an E3, I would have had like 5 or 6 games that I would have been like, you know what, that's on my list. That's on my radar.
Well,
that's
the crazy thing, I think what...
I'm sorry, maybe Lego, between Owen and I, with Lego Horizon.
But what's crazy, though, is we're in an age range, you do a little bit more than me, Indiana Jones should be our jam. Like
I'll play it.
Yeah,
but again,
yeah.
it's
we're
there.
Not excited.
It's
yeah.
It's gonna be like I'm like, oh, that's right. It comes out this week. Okay, I'll play it when I get home from work.
But like in a different time, that should be the oh shit. There's an Indiana Jones game. It's coming. I think there's a couple issues with Indiana Jones where I think it's a mistake making it a first person game.
Yeah.
And also, again, I think the Indiana Jones, because the movie bombed, the last one, like I'm super
totally
curious.
The movie doing well or not doing well totally affected Avatar Frontiers.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry, the distance between the game and the movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because that game kind of came and went. The movie,
yep.
Did really well, but Indiana Jones, it's like, okay, how excited are people going to be? Like the people in the age range that should be excited for it seem like they're kind of excited for it. Yep. And I think,
and by the connecting them to movies, by the time we get all the fun Marvel video games, we're going to be all Marvel fatigued from the movies.
And we already are Marvel fatigued.
Yeah,
like
no,
crazy.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, cool. That Captain America Black Panther game looks amazing. When's it coming?
Yeah, yeah. And then the fact that there's going to be 2 Black Panther games technically, it's like that's going to be confusing for people.
Oh, and Wolverine and another Spider-Man.
Yeah. There's so many different things that go into it, but yeah, like the Indiana Jones stuff,
and trying to revive Suicide Squad, which they're going to try to do.
No, they aren't. That's dead. But there's already a new Arkham-verse Batman game coming to VR this year.
The crowd reaction when they realized that was VR shows you the state of VR, because people are like, oh.
Yeah. They're like, oh, they're going to right the wrongs of Suicide Squad, and it's VR. It's a one-off. Enjoy.
But they said that the reluctant sound of disappointment in that room was like the state. Like there's anybody that wants to make a game for VR, there's your answer of why it won't, like.
Yeah. If the Batman game can't get people excited, but people are just like desperate for a Batman game, and then they see it's VR, it's like, yeah, I'm not buying a Meta. I'm not buying the Meta Quest. So. But yeah, Dave, that was not E3. We do have a couple showcases that we can cover next week. That's coming. We have the Ubisoft Forward. We have the stuff for Dragon Age. We didn't talk about Devolver Digital this week, but we could talk about them next week.
Did they have a thing?
They did on.
Usually, there's one thing in there that I'm like, oh, I want to buy that.
Yeah, there was a couple. There was a couple of things in there. It'd be definitely worth a watch for you. But yeah, and then there was like Day of the Devs for the indies. So there's definitely a couple different showcases that we'll talk about probably next week.
Awesome, because there won't be much other news. So
yeah.
All right, that's the show this week. We're going to skip over questions. We're going to skip over playing and watching. Obviously, this is just a showcase focus show. So follow us on Twitter at Digital Days Pod. You can follow Michael at The First MJC. You can follow myself at Good Dave Hunt. Facebook group, Discord server are there. Patreon's there. And other than that, I hope everyone enjoyed watching the non-E3 coverage that they did. And I hope everyone, we've truncated this down to one episode that covered 3 days. It kind of just shows you the state of how news is being released in June, but it's still fun. So I hope everyone has a great week and keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick. See ya.